Carly Hoppin,
Yes.
Mike Morris,
Yes.
and Jeff Stevens.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the Pledge of Allegiance.
Members of the public will be allowed to address the Feather River West Levee Financing Authority Board of Directors on items of interest to the public that are not within the subject matter jurisdiction of any board. Any member of the audience who may wish to bring a matter before the board that has not been placed on the agenda may do so at this time. However, state law provides that no action may be taken. Is there any member of the public here who would like to speak? Thank you. Hey, Charlie, is your mic on?
No.
Thank you, Michael. Consent calendar, the calendar groups together those items which are considered non-controversial or for which the prior policy direction has been given to staff and they require only routine action by the board. The chair will advise the audience that matters that may be adopted in total or by one motion. However, the board may, at its adoption or upon request of any member of the public, consider any matters separately. Do we have a motion to approve or deny?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Adoption of Resolution 2025-01 approving the 2025-26 fiscal year assessment district budget and levy and collection of assessments for the Feather River West Levee Financing Authority operations and maintenance assessment district in Sutter County. Drew, do you want to talk a little bit about that, or how are we going to do this?
Yeah, we're just going to do it just like the Sabufka one. Seth has a presentation prepared
Okay.
for you guys.
All right. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Chairman Hoppin. So the recommendation here, again, is to adopt a resolution approving the budget and the assessment, the levy of the assessment for 25-26. So the budget for 24-25 reflected $2,225,880. The assessment for Fralifa has an escalator incorporated into it. That was approved as part of the approval of the assessment district several years ago. It's pegged to CPI, the April to April index that's published, a very specific one that represents, it's intended to represent the escalation in labor costs for the area. So that index was it was an increase of 2.76%. And so the budget applying that escalation is $2,325,499. That would be the overall budget for all services provided by LD1 and LD9 for all the locally maintained levies. We can't levy 100% of that budget each year because we have to apportion out general benefits that are not accessible to properties. So once you net the general benefit, that's the way the engineer's report laid it out, you are able to levy $225,519. The same amount, so the prior year's budget, the $2,225,880, that's not what was levied. That was the gross budget. We had to net from that the general benefit expense. I can look up what the levy was last year, but it's about $90,000 to $100,000 less each year. So what the board is being asked to approve is the levy of $2,225,519 and the associated budget with that. So the way that $2,225,519 gets split out amongst Fralifa, LD1, including the maintenance for the original MA3 levy that's now part of LD1, and LD9, it's shown here on this table. This is how we apportion the revenues once they're collected to each of the entities. The first thing we do is we fund the administrative expense of Fralifa. That would be $96,251. Out of that $96,251, we need to make our payment to Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency. If you recall, we're paying back over 15 years a little bit less than $750,000 of funding to form the district and form the assessment, form the JPA and form the assessment district. So the remainder after that $96,251 goes to pay for the administrative expenses of the agency, including our assessment administrator, our insurance premiums, and some support by LWA for this type of work, and any other public outreach support by Kim Floyd. 2 years ago, we delegated authority to the executive director to be able to issue $10,000 contracts. So that's the rest of that service. Then on a percentage basis, all the remaining revenue is apportioned between LD1 and LD9 based on this 82.1% and 17.9% split. And that was the split of the budget that was approved within the engineer's report previously. That was the share of how that budget broke down. So you can see what the revenues are expected to be for LD1. Of that 225 would be $1,748,130 and $381,139 for LD9. That's if 100% of the assessments are collected. So if there's any delinquencies or things like that, it may vary a little bit if non-payments don't come in, but if people pay late, you get a little bit of interest and penalties and so forth.
Isn't there some mechanism that on certain types of assessments, if certain parcels weren't collected, the county would cover it, and then?
Yeah, that's called the teeter program, and Sutter County does not teeter direct charges. The way Butte County does. So, for example, for Sutter Butte, whatever we put on the roll in Butte County, Sutter Butte will get. In exchange for that, what you're giving up is the potential to collect your share of any delinquencies and interest and penalties that are charged to the property owner. So the county, you agree to let the county keep that for guaranteeing that you're going to get everything you collect on the secured roll.
I'd almost rather have the guarantee than.
Many special districts like that, and so that's why that program's available. And for counties who have much larger budgets than special districts, a little bit of flux doesn't impact them as much. And they tend to make out because there's more penalties and interest. And they can handle if it takes 5 to 7 years to foreclose and collect on a property. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's exactly why that program exists.
So if I was asked a question I couldn't answer, when you look at the assessments for this year for the former MA3, can we compare that to what they had been paying to the state the prior year? Is our assessment higher or lower or similar, or do you know?
I can't recall the answer to that question off the top of my head.
I mean, obviously,
I'd have to go back and look at it.
Obviously, they voted for this because they felt it would be a savings and they didn't like the way the budgets were assessed in arrears from the state. But if somebody asked me if we made an improvement, I couldn't answer that. Can you find out for us and let me know?
My recollection, as I think about this more, is that there was some big variances in the budget. Like over 5 years, it went up a real high and then came back down and went up real high. And so it fluctuated quite a bit. And there was no limit. Here, we can only increase the assessment by the CPI. And so those property owners can expect to pay no more than what they're being assessed today. Plus that
their assessment was based on work that had actually been done the previous year. So there wasn't any limit to it. But I am not in that district, and I don't know what they were paying. So,
Charlie, if you remember, that was something we evaluated prior to the 218. That was Sean put that together. On a 10-year average, we were considerably lower.
Yeah.
Than what the state maintenance yard charged.
And that all depends on, if the state actually decides to work or not, right?
Yeah, high water years, particularly high water years. 2017 was an extraordinarily high year for.
Yeah, I know Seth's correct. I mean, it fluctuated wildly.
Yeah, and the way that they would handle that is they presented a budget for the MA to the Central Valley Flood Protection Board, conducted a hearing, then they levied that actual budget, and if there was any shortfall in spending from the prior year, when they sent the letter to the county saying you need to collect this, they would add that shortfall. And so that was never part of the hearing either. So what they actually levied was not what they discussed in the public meeting, which was another frustrating aspect of it.
We're always.
One thing to note too, on our CPI index, so we can charge the maximum of CPI or 4%, whatever is lower. So, I'm sorry, the maximum of, so the minimum of CPI or 4%, whatever's lower. So I said that backwards. So here, the CPI index was less than our max, so that's the most it can be raised.
Thank you very much.
So, oh, sure.
Just from my own understanding, I think it was the other slide, that one, the 2.76 was the 2.3, and what's the general benefit expense?
So special benefits are the only thing that's accessible to property owners through an assessment. So any general benefits of the district have to be calculated and cannot be levied because they're benefits experienced by the public at large versus a specific property. So when we looked at the amount in the engineer's report, the engineer looked at the amount of the general benefits as a calculation of all the benefits, and it represented a small percentage of the total benefits received by the district. When they allocated the total budget to all those benefits, they deemed that portion of, say, just by way of example, I think it's easier to explain. If you had a $100,000 budget and 98% of your benefits are special benefits and 2% of them were general benefits, then the allocated portion of the cost to general benefits would be $2,000. So that's what they're calling that general benefit expense. It's the share of the total benefits that are determined to be general benefits expressed as a percentage of the budget. And so we can't, out of the total benefits, 100,000 out of about 2.3 million was determined to be general. And so that we have to make that up with another funding source. So the only other funding source to the two agencies that are receiving the benefits was LD9's share of general fund property tax revenues. LD1 does not receive any other revenue other than from locals. They get grant revenues from the state, but any other revenue from local agencies other than the assessments. LD9 does. So
You're talking about their ad valorem tax?
correct, their ad valorem tax, their share of general fund property taxes. So that's what we're using to fund that portion of the budget. So that will stay at $100,000. They're going to receive that revenue from the county, and then they'll get the rest of the revenue from the assessment. And so that's how they make up and fund their total budget of $481,000.
2.3, we actually, our assess that, and we get that into 2.35.
We'll set the budget of 2.325, and then when we allocate those costs across all the benefits, we can't collect the general benefits. So that's why we end up levying 2.25. And so that's the amount that gets apportioned from the assessment to the levy districts.
Thank you for your explanation, Seth. Are you going to present the audit for last year?
No, so we need an action on the,
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, they did vote on that, right? Or I can't recall.
On the budget?
On the resolution, I think we need a vote on that.
We did vote on it, didn't we?
You did? Not yet, okay.
I'll make the motion to go ahead on it.
Somebody second?
Thank you.
Anybody second?
Aye.
Okay. Tara,
No, second. I said aye.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you.
So you guys should have the draft audit in front of you. This is the first audit for the Feather River West Levee Financing Authority, as we didn't collect funds until the 23-24 fiscal year. There was relatively a handful of transactions that occurred, the major one being the one that Seth just showed you, how the money gets apportioned to the various levy districts. If there's any questions from the board on the audit?
Same stuff we go through at the levy district meetings, correct?
Exactly.
Our payables and all that good stuff?
Exactly.
A lot of paper for a pretty small audit, Drew.
Well, that's why we hire Smith and Newell to do that.
So I think the process would be that this is the draft that the accountants prepared, and then this is just for informational purposes to the board, correct? And then the
Yeah,
auditor
if
will
the board,
finalize.
it'd be the pleasure of the board if they wanted to approve the draft, then we could finalize that with Smith and Newell. Unless they had any changes that,
Yeah. So
I know on the last one, there was a misspelled director's name. I don't think there are on this one, hopefully.
Given the nature of this draft, I don't have any problem approving it, but I'm not object if somebody would like to review it and vote on it at our next meeting. The only problem is we don't have meetings on a monthly basis. So what's the pleasure of the board on that?
Through the chair,
Sir,
I'll make the motion to adopt it.
any objections to that? Jeff, if you want to wait on that, nobody's going to jump up and down and scream, so. I won't write an op-ed about you on in the paper or anything.
I'm just thinking with, not having the information or anything, I'd hate, I'd rather have a final report and maybe wait till the next meeting to adopt it.
Then we'll do that.
yeah, I mean, the one thing I would say is that it is an independent audit report. So really these are your financial statements that have been prepared by the district, by the entity. The content of the report and the draft that they prepared, they have found no anomalies or, everything's been prepared. And so the receipt of the audit is generally not an action item. Like, for example, Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency, they just receive and file the audit. And so to the extent that there is any comments on the audit or any questions that perhaps would change the financial statements, I don't think that's going to change the auditor's conclusion that the reports generally reflect the financial position and the activities of the agency for the fiscal year. So I would just say from that context, that's really what you're looking.
Okay, is there any need, if we don't have a meeting next month, does that, it can be okayed then or now, it really doesn't matter?
Yeah, I mean, it's really whether or not, I think maybe perhaps the best way to handle this would be to say that we don't accept the audit, this draft audit today, but the audit can be finalized by the auditor, and then you would ask that it be brought back to the board for receipt and file when it is finalized, when you have a finalized audit. That's generally how we handle it with Sutter Butte, for example. It just comes as an informational item to the board when it's finalized and it's prepared by the financial staff, and that's how we handle it. I mean, you guys may handle it differently for the LDs, but because you want to receive a draft first before you receive the final audit, and that's kind of what I think what you're suggesting here, right, Drew?
Yeah.
Are you comfortable with that, Jeff?
Yeah, okay, it's fine.
Very good. Thank you, Seth. Executive Director Report of Activities.
We don't have anything to report at this time. We'll continue on collecting our assessment and distributing it to the proper levy districts.
I know it's out of sequence a bit, but I notice we have a member of the public here that wasn't here when we called for public comments. Do you have something as a courtesy, you would like to address the board about?
No, sir. Sutter County Supervisor Jeff Booth.
Well, you were a little bit late and we have such a slow schedule here. I wanted to be courteous to you, so
No worries, I appreciate it.
thank you. If there's no objection, we'll stand adjourned.
Sounds great.